Hi, everybody. Jean Humbrecht with Humbrecht Law, criminal and traffic defense attorney in Manassas, Virginia. Welcome to my monthly webinar. If you are joining us on YouTube or Facebook or listening to the podcast, thanks so much for tuning in. Today we have a great panel discussion. I'm really excited about it. It's about writing a book, and it's a panel discussion with 4 fabulous authors and me, just an author, not fabulous. And we're going to be talking about our experiences and writing a book and getting the book published and all sorts of other things. So if you guys have questions, pop them into the chat and I will try to ask them as we are going. But definitely feel free to ask questions as we go. If this was an in-person panel, we'd be doing Q&A at the end, but with the realities of Facebook, I know sometimes people are popping in and out, so feel free to type in the question whenever you get a chance. So our first panelist is Mike Ginsberg. Mike Ginsberg is an attorney in Washington, D.C., practicing in the field of national security law. He spent a decade in private practice at Arnold & Porter in Washington, D.C., and then worked several years in the U.S. government as a senior associate general counsel in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, where he served as legal counsel for the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects activity. He currently is vice president and deputy general counsel at a Virginia-based defense contractor. Mike has also served in senior leadership positions in the Republican Party of Virginia and is the co-founder of the Suburban Virginia Republican Coalition. A 1997 graduate of Harvard College and 2002 graduate of Harvard Law School, he also holds a master's in aeronautics and astronautics from Stanford. A native of Baltimore, Maryland, Ginsberg lives in Virginia with his wife and 2 children. Mike is the author of Debt Bomb, a political thriller about an apocalyptic threat to America ticking remorselessly in the background while Americans continue their daily routines, oblivious to the danger. Before I finish reading everybody's bio, would you guys just mind muting yourselves because I hear an echo, and then we can go off mute. Our next speaker is David Lee Martin. I've never actually met David in person, but David was a guest on Dan Warhide's podcast, the Pro Growth Marketing podcast. And I was just fascinated with everything he had to say, and it was really inspirational, and I reached out to him. So David is a digital shepherd. He helps authors, artists, and entrepreneurs transform their ideas into powerful publications, online courses, and digital products. And he can tell us more about that later. David has actually written a number of books, but in particular, we're going to be talking about Discovering and Developing a Secret Life of Prayer, Developing Your Spiritual Life, Book 1. Come boldly into the secret place of prayer and discover new depths of relationship with God, profound practical keys that will carry you into your loving Father's presence. Our third speaker is Russ Mcintosh. Russ is the owner and creative director of Vision Idea Design. Last year, the firm helped several authors, including myself, publish their books, assisted them with book covers, interior page layouts, and prepared the files for printing. Russ has personally served as the publisher for Labyrinth Entertainment and was the editor-in-chief of the Launchpad anthology for Joe Quesada of Marvel. I don't know what that means. Russ, you'll have to tell me about that later. His artwork has appeared on a myriad of book covers, and he served as the art director for Phoenix Tree Publishing. Russ has several personal books available on Amazon, including short story, a collection of poetry, and an art retrospective. He is available for any help or questions about publishing that you may have. And his book that he's going to be talking about today is The Mindscape of Russ Mcintosh, Surreal Art That Entices the Mind. And that's selected original catalog of artwork showcasing his early years. And our final panelist is Mary Rook. Mary is a mother of 5 and survivor of the debilitating pregnancy disease, hyperemesis gravidarum. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. She's also a black belt and co-owner of 3 martial arts schools in the Northern Virginia area. And that's actually how I met Mary, through her husband, Tim Rook, who owns Premier Martial Arts, which I went to one Krav Maga class there, and it was so much fun. I'm going back. Mary's debut novel, currently titled Lita of the Sky, is a young adult urban sci-fi fantasy about a brilliant high school academic on track for Ivy League. When volatile, erratic powers surface, she finds it may be those academic aspirations that caused her powers to erupt in the first place. Forced to leave her beloved family behind before she accidentally destroys them, she must harness all scientific know-how and self-control, or she'll never see her family again. So as you all can see, we have a broad range of topics from our authors today. So I am just going to get into the questions. So my first question is for all panelists, and Mike, I will start with you. Why did you decide to write a book? Mike, you're muted.
Sorry about that. No, I just was saying thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate the opportunity, to participate with this great panel. It really sounds exciting. I'm really looking forward to this. Why did I write the book? I guess, my experience in the government. I think you heard in the bio there that I spent several years at the DNI's office, the Office of Director of National Intelligence. And I was taken, one of the things that I just could not stop thinking about was just how enormous the United States government is. Every day I would find out something new that we were doing, some office somewhere. And it just occurred to me that nobody, I think, has a real full grip on everything the United States government is doing. And really, I thought about every day how much we're paying for that. And not a day went by that I wouldn't think about the national debt, which was growing and growing and continuing to grow. And obviously the last couple of years, it's exploded because of the pandemic. And I thought to myself, what if this all stopped? What if the money tree ran out? And I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I decided, well, I'm gonna write about it, rather than sort of bottle up the thought. And the other, I guess, inspiration for it, you also heard I was involved in Republican politics, was my concern about the party's, my view, straying away from its sort of fiscal responsibility message. Coupling that with the growth of the debt, I said, there's a story in that. And so that was really what inspired me to think about putting a story together about those two things.
Okay, well, that's a really interesting background to your book.
Yeah.
All right, David, how about you? Let's just talk about your first book, because David's written several.
Yeah, I mean, I actually got into the whole online space because I developed an online Bible school. And that was kind of my introduction, like getting my feet wet and trying to figure out how the whole thing works. And then from there, kind of discovered the opportunity for Kindle and began to explore options for self-publishing, and really have never looked back. So the developing prayer book wasn't necessarily my first book. I've done children's books, cookbooks, coloring books, journals, all sorts of different things. So yes, it's one of many. But there's the self-publishing opportunity that we have nowadays is just absolutely incredible. The gatekeepers have just been moved out of the way, and we've been given freedom to get out there and put our words out to the world where they should be heard and read. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask about self-publishing a little later too. So I'll definitely want your thoughts on that.
Cool.
All right, next, Mary. Why did you unmute yourself? Why did you decide to write your book, or why did you decide to write any book?
I have enjoyed writing since I was a child. I love stories, and I have a big imagination, and so and I grew up on like Star Trek and Star Wars with my dad, and the sci-fi fantasy genre especially is so interesting and fun to me, because it has there's so much imagination that can be in it, and so that's kind of my niche of where I am right now. And so I actually I graduated in creative writing from Utah State University. And so I was like, I have to use my degree, right? I have to do something with it. At some point, I have to sit down and write my book. So while being a mom, I've been writing this book. And right now it's in, I've been trying to get it traditionally published, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely going to want to talk to you when we talk about self-publishing versus the traditional publishing. because I went the self-publishing route, like I think
Right.
with Russ's help, obviously, which I'll talk about later. My
Okay.
book wouldn't be out there if it wasn't for Russ, because I got to the point where I said, I can't do this layout anymore. I don't care about this book. I'm not going to get it published, but Russ stepped in and helped me. So, oh, Russ, I was so stressed out that day. I apologize. It wasn't just that day. Anyway, so Russ, unmute yourself. Tell everybody why you decided to write your book. Well, any of the books that you want to talk about. Why did you decide to write?
Well, I first got into publishing my own books. My friend and I, Dave, we were doing comic books about more than 20 years ago. And we tried getting into Marvel Comics. That's where Joe Quesada comes from. He was the Stan Lee 20 years ago of Marvel Comics. And he had me take over as editor-in-chief at one point for the Launchpad series that he was doing. And that was a big stepping stone for me of getting into the world of publishing and printing. And so when me and my friend Dave started creating our own comic book, the self-publishing route seemed the best venture, because that's how you can control more of the effort that's going into it. You can control the marketing, you can control how the world is seeing your efforts. So it was a great effort for us to do that on our first book. And from there, I learned so much, knew so much, that I decided to start helping other people to help publish their books as well.
So I guess since we're all talking about the self and traditional publishing, we'll get into that next. And I'll just throw this out there to whoever wants to answer. Maybe Russ, if you could start. People watching may not know the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing. We all know what it is because we are publishing or have published. But whoever wants to, can you briefly explain what the difference is?
Well, with traditional publishing, it's your Penguin Press, it's your Paladine Books, it's the main publishers that are out there. Avon, most of my books are all self-published around me, so you'll see on the spine who the publisher is. You'll open it up, it has their information on the back that says Labyrinth Entertainment. It was my previous company. They'll try to get the book cover for you. They'll take all the effort away from getting the book done, talking to the printer, doing the marketing for you. They take all that burden away from you. But with that, they also take a cut of the book sales and things that go along with that. So with self-publishing, you're allowed to market your book how you want to, and you get to reap all the benefits of it. Now, with larger companies like Penguin, they obviously have larger budgets and can do big billboard signs for you. They can take out advertisements on the local radios for you. So there's the pros and cons to each of those. I'll let someone else talk, Dave.
So David, I think you did all self-publishing. Is that right?
Yeah, completely. Yes, yeah.
So
I would be hard to convince to take a publishing deal unless it were really solid and they gave me lots and lots of money. I'm almost at $1 million in royalties from self-published books, and I sell my books at 99 cents each and get 30% on that. So that's a lot of books, eh? That's a lot of books shifted.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I got friends who have been offered like upwards of $30,000 or $40,000 for a 3-book publishing deal, and they've turned it down because it just wouldn't be worth their while. They can make more money doing the same thing, selling it as self-published. I mean, that doesn't come. I mean, it doesn't come easy.
Right.
You've got to do the legwork. But from what I've experienced, because I got a number of friends who are traditionally published as well, you end up doing just as much legwork if you are traditionally published as if you self-publish. And in self-publishing, if I price within a certain range on Amazon, I get 70% of the royalty cut. I mean, that's just like unheard of in a traditional publishing type arena. I mean, not to discourage anyone who's pursuing that route. It's just not for me. I'm kind of my background's a bit more punk rock, really. So I prefer the freedom and the liberty to experiment with ideas, things like that. And self-publishing gives me that opportunity.
Yeah, I published my book on Amazon. It's only on Amazon for right now. I never really considered the traditional publishing, but once I saw how, I mean, quote unquote, easy. Once you've done your first book, it's much easier. But I've seen how easy it is. But I mean, as I learned and had to go to Russ for help, you're doing everything yourself. You're doing the book cover, which you can do. You can pick a book cover that Amazon already provides you. You can design one in Canva, a website I'm starting to really love. Or you can pay somebody to do a book cover. You know, but you got to do the editing yourself, and it has to be done just right. And then the marketing yourself. I'm sorry, I said and layout. I keep interchanging editing and layout. But there are these different steps that you have to go through. And I guess I'm kind of getting into a later question, but a lot of things that I didn't really think about when I first started writing my book. But I still wouldn't go back and change anything. But because with Amazon, you know, you have an opportunity to be a best-selling author, you know, based on different ways that you can publish. And you can, I just keep saying Amazon, but it's barnesandnoble.com. Like, you can put your book on a bunch of different places. And what David is saying about the royalties is true. There were two different options. The one that I went with, I think I get the 70%, but Amazon does everything for you. Somebody buys a book, 3 days later, they receive it. And there is not a warehouse full of my books. When someone buys it, it is printed, the cover is printed, it's put together, and it's sent out, and you don't have to worry about any of it. So that was just my experience. I mean, there were some things I had to learn to do along the way, but I don't think I would go back. But I did want to ask a question to Mary, since you're doing traditional publishing, and anyone else, Mike, anybody else who knows about this, because I didn't pursue this, so I don't really have any details. If you're going the traditional publishing route, do they pay you money up front, or do you have to sell books before they give you any money?
It depends on the contract that you have. Some people, and it could literally be anywhere from $0 to $1 million. There's just a wide range of what the advance would be, but that advance that they would give you, you have to earn it out. Your sales have to earn out before you start collecting those royalties.
Okay. So, but do they pay you in advance, or do they just take care of the whole printing, publishing, advertising for you, but you don't get paid at that point?
Yeah, they take care of all that stuff. They give you that advance is, you know, they're kind of buying your book sort of, but also preemptively guessing how many sales that you'll receive. If you reach those sales, or if you don't reach those sales, that advanced money is still yours. But if you surpass those sales, then you start collecting royalties. And that will continue until the rest of your life.
Oh, okay. All right. So my next question has to do, it's kind of two questions in one: research and how many hours you spend writing. Actually, no, that's not the question I want to ask. How long it took you to write? Let's just focus on one book for now. How long it takes you to write one book, and how many hours, how long do you spend researching for that, if you research at all? Whoever wants to start. Mike, do you want to start?
Sure. No, I'm glad to start. It took me about 3 years. And it was really because, you know, this is my first book, and I did a lot of editing. You know, I worked with an editor. In fact, I worked with a couple editors over the course of the process. You know, it really evolved. I mean, there are probably 3 manuscripts that I got through before I was ready to start, you know, talking to publishers. And so that took a fair bit of time. And I'd encourage anybody, you know, to have a second pair of eyes, and somebody who's not your friend, or somebody who's not, you know, might have a little bias, you know, somebody who's really going to tell it to you straight. Read it. And I did that, and that was really helpful. And it really did make the book, I think, a whole lot better. When I look at the old manuscript and the new manuscript, it's a different book. So I really encourage doing that. And so I guess that's what took the time. It was off and on. I mean, there are periods of time where you kind of go a little dry and you kind of need to wait a little bit, or you get a little bit of a block or something like that. But and of course life intervenes, so you have that going on. But yeah, I mean, for me it was probably almost coming up on 3 years, and the book will be out July 1.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, working a full-time job and writing a book, probably more so your first book, it takes time. Mine took less than 3 years, but that doesn't mean it's any better. I went through or any worse. I don't know. I went through periods where I had to put it away for a while, or like you said, life things get in the way, and then come back to it. And I think it's good to come back with a fresh set of eyes. Anyone else have an opinion on that?
If I can say, it took me about 10 years to finish this manuscript and get it to where it is. And it's because I had, first of all, I had to get serious about actually writing it. But then also, between each child, each pregnancy, I got so sick with hyperemesis, which is like a throwing up. I threw up so much. Okay, anyway. Those breaks, it allowed me to, look at my book subjectively, but also it just took so much more time because of it. And I lost that time. So I could be so much further along if it wasn't for that. So I think breaks are good, but you have to have a healthy amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? David, have you noticed that with each book, it takes you less and less time?
I only write short books.
Okay.
I don't have the patience of many people. I don't write fiction. So I mean, I absolutely admire anyone who writes fiction. I pay other people to write my fiction for me. I have an idea, and then I ask someone who's far better than I am at telling a story to actually make it happen. But as far as the books that I write are concerned, generally they will take me a couple of weeks at most. But then I did 22 years pastoring churches. So the books that I write are in one sense you could say, well, it took me 40 years or 45 years or 49 years now, close. Because it's all coming out. Most of the stuff that I write is coming out of my life experience. Mm-hmm, if that makes sense. So it's not just kind of sit down and knock out the book. There's been many, many years and many hours put in that those words now kind of spring from, if you know what I mean. But yes, I published my first poetry collection this week. And so so Monday I had the idea. Monday morning, I just trawled my hard drive for poetry that I had scattered around. Tuesday, I formatted it. Wednesday, I hit publish. And what day is it today?
Friday.
Thursday, it went through the publishing process, and Friday, it's live. So, yeah, that pretty much sums up my process. It's a little...
Yeah, and David was actually writing this morning because we were messaging back and forth, and he said that he was in the middle of writing, and I'm like, wow.
I write every single day.
See, now that I want to ask everybody about that. How often do you write? Now, David, do you write every day just because you enjoy it? It's a cathartic experience for you, or are you just always intending on publishing books?
Everything to me is potentially a book. But I also just made a commitment. If I'm going to be a writer, then I should write. It's one thing to call yourself a writer, isn't it? I mean, everyone here knows, there's a lot of people out there saying I'm a writer, but they're not writing anything. And it's like, no, the writing is what makes you the writer. And so I just kind of made the commitment, man, I'm just going to do this thing. And so, I don't write a lot every day necessarily. Some days I might write several thousand words, but most days, a lot of days, it might just be 500. But there's not a day, well, certainly a weekday. I try to weekends. It depends what I'm doing. But yeah, it's just part of my lifestyle. It's my habit.
Well, what about everybody else?
Well, for me, I know I don't write every day. I'm more of an artist, but my book is all about my artwork. And while it can't be all about the pictures itself, you have to include some text in there too. So each one, I have to write a little story synopsis about each one, and that's a little time consuming. So this is my first book in a series of 4 books, and I'm halfway through the second book. I have all the photographs and all the references and all the materials. I just have to write what goes with each picture, and I'm like on a weekly process right now. I write at least once a week to try to fill that book up, to try to get it ready for publishing. And that's just a weekly process I go through. Probably on Saturday, Sunday, I'll do my writing.
Yeah, as I said from the beginning, we have a wide variety of experience in so many different ways, from people who are publishing their first book to people who, David, who has published dozens, and everybody is in a different genre. Mike, it's, I guess, a murder mystery, for lack of a better term, a mystery novel. Mary's got a young adult sci-fi. Russ, it's art and poetry, and David's everything. So I mean, and then different experience and different ways that we work too. I don't write every day in that I'm writing to publish another book. I want to. I write every day because I'm working on my website. I'm writing blog posts or things like that. So I'm always writing, but not necessarily with a book in mind. So Mike, Mary, how do you guys answer that? How often do you write, or how often did you write when you were working on the book? I mean, I know we talked about length of time, but
I'll jump in, and as a mom of 5 kids under the age of 9, I don't get a lot of personal time, but I can make that time with, my husband as a support. When he's home and he has free time, he's like, you go and you have some time for yourself, because I need it quiet. I also have a very supportive dad who lives close by, and he can keep an eye on the kids if I want to write. So when I'm in that time of drafting or editing, I try to write every day, but that doesn't always happen. And I just try to give myself that grace that it's okay if I don't get that writing done today. I'll get it done tomorrow. It's still going to be there.
And Mike, what about you?
Sure. I mean, sometimes I think my secret sauce is insomnia. There are times. I mean, we had during the course of writing the book, we had a young daughter, and she would wake up in the middle of the night and she'd be screaming, and I'd go, help her out, and she'd go back to sleep, and then I wouldn't be able to go back to sleep, and I was up and I was awake and I was lucid, and I actually got a lot of writing done in the hours of 12 to 7 in the morning. But beyond that, so I did a fair bit, in wee hours or, those kinds of things. But I also found that, periodically I might say, I'm going to write an hour a day. And I might, take a break from work, and instead of surfing the internet, I'm going to write for an hour. Or if I had an idea of some kind, I'm working away, and that thing I was thinking about before, it's sort of a puzzle piece kind of snaps into place. I'll take a break and I'll kind of start writing it out and getting it done, and then put it on the shelf and kind of knit it back together later on. So it was a combination of these long blocks of time and odd hours with these smaller blocks of time where inspiration hit, or I said I'm going to write. And there were periods where I didn't do a lot of writing at all, frankly. But I found that if I let those periods get too long, I would get out of practice and out of shape. So I really had to ensure that if I did, have life stuff intervene, that I didn't let it intervene too long, or I would lose my momentum.
So it sounds like we all are trying to write as often as we can, and we take advantage of those blocks of time when we have them, whether it's a little bit every day or once a week when Russ knows he can sit down and write, or when Mary can schedule somebody to watch the kids. Because like you, I don't have kids, but I can't concentrate when there's yelling and screaming. I couldn't get work done. So it sounds like we're always thinking about it. We're always trying to do it, even if it doesn't necessarily get done every day. But it's a fairly consistent part of our lives. Would you all agree? Okay. Sarah White actually asked a question, and I want to ask it now because Mike mentioned writer's block. I'd actually read that you're never supposed to ask an author about this, but Sarah asked, so I'm going to ask anyway. How do you stay motivated? I know this might sound similar to what we've already discussed, but how do you stay motivated on the days that you have writer's block? Because there have been times where I'm sitting writing my book, and I cannot put anything on paper, computer screen, not paper, but I'm stuck. I hit a wall. I can't think of anything else. I don't know what to say. I'm sure we've all experienced that in some form. So what do you do about that? Do you take a break? What do you do? Anybody who wants to start?
I do a free flow writing. I do a similar thing with my art as well. But when I'm stuck and I just can't figure out what's going on with that paragraph, that page, just start writing something completely different, totally absent from what that is, and just do a free flow writing. Start writing, Tom met Jane. Well, what did Jane and Tom do? Well, they went to the park. Well, what happened next? And just do a little free flow exercise. It helps break open your mind a little bit and helps your little brain exercise, if you will. And so you tell a little short story about Tom met Jane and they went to the park, and then they went to the tree, and at the tree they found a bird, and then it just keeps going, and it helps the flow and helps your energy go.
Anyone else have any suggestions for what's helped them?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I did, I found that, and it was very similar to what Russ suggested, is if I was stuck on a scene or something like that, I might jump to a totally different scene, that I'd been thinking about beforehand, where, it might be far apart, totally separate part of the book, maybe the ending, maybe the middle, just totally separate, but something that I had thought about, and try to write a little bit about that, even if, whether it's good or not, but I would kind of try to jump to something else that I had thought about. And I thought, okay, I have an idea of how I want that to look, even though I'm kind of stuck over here. Maybe over there, I can get it to roll a little bit better. And, sometimes I would just lay fallow, I just take a day or two, and I might think about it before I went to bed or something like that. And eventually, it sort of comes around, but that was kind of what I did.
Yeah. So I kind of did that in my book too. Cause in my book, like Mike, you said, you had 3 completely different manuscripts. Mine changed a lot from the beginning to the end. But at one point, obviously, I had an outline for the 22 chapters. And I would say, okay, today I'm going to work on this one. But I just got stuck and frustrated. So I would move on to another one, even if I wasn't finished. And I had something else I wanted to look up, but I had an idea. And so I would just write it and save it there and then come back to the other one later. So even though it was the same book, there was one part that I was just stuck on, and it might sound like it's all the same to somebody who doesn't practice criminal law, but in my head it was very different. So moving on to another chapter, that helped me, and I felt like I accomplished something, and I did accomplish something, and I just came back to that other part that I got stuck on later. David, Mary, any suggestions on writer's block?
I have one more because you guys have given great examples. Sometimes what can work for me sometimes is I just sit there and if I know what I want to happen in that scene, I will just kind of write out the dialogue, purely dialogue, or just the setup of the scene, or just some bare bones type of deal where I can get something out and then come back later and revise.
Mm-hmm. David, you probably just move on to your next book, right? And then come back.
I've got about 5 or 6 books on the go. Some of them may just have about 3 paragraphs. Others maybe several chapters. But
how did I know?
I a lot of my daily writing, like you say, Jean, is actually blog. I blog on my website, davidleemartin.com. But much of that will become at a later stage a book. So Or if I've got a book idea, I'll just completely disappear from kind of anywhere and close myself away and just let it spill on the page. So, but I've got to admit, I'm quite fortunate in that I rarely experience what I could call writer's block, really. A bit like Russ says, I just start typing. I usually get one line. I might have a title for a blog post or a title for a chapter, and I'll just start punching away without really trying to second guess myself. And that tends to open up the flow. And oftentimes I'll end up going back and changing the title because the article's gone or the chapter's gone in a completely different direction than I anticipated. But yeah, I mean, I'm thankful to say that writer's block is not something that's really been an issue for me.
Oh, well, that's good. Maybe when we all publish as many books as David, we can say that too. Dawn has a question. Dawn Whitmore. She said she's late to the live and asked for forgiveness. You're forgiven, Dawn. If not already asked, how many of you work with a mentor or a writing coach? Anybody? I don't have one. Yeah. Mike?
I did, yeah. I thought it was helpful, especially in my sort of, I guess, after I had gone through a couple of manuscripts, my last manuscript, I worked closely with a writing coach, and he really helped kind of with structure, with some things. I was a novice. I mean, it was the first time I've ever written a novel. I'm a lawyer. I write a lot of legal stuff, but I don't write a lot of novels. Although some of my clients might disagree, but you know, I think yeah, I think that the having that, you know, somebody who has that experience was very helpful to me. He was a very, you know, reasonably priced. In fact, he was in Canada, but he was really, really good. And, you know, I found it very sort of eye-opening for me. And the other thing, and this sort of maybe dovetails with the very first question that you asked, I did a process called hybrid publishing, where you pay a certain amount of money and the publisher will put in a certain amount of money. I paid sort of a flat fee of $3,000. But that covers everything, including several rounds of editing. So in addition to the writing coach, the publisher also had an editor inside that continued to polish the manuscript. So there was a round there that it went through. So and hybrid, you know, just to close the thought, the hybrid, you know, you pay that little bit of fee, but they cover everything, including a lot of editing, including the cover, including a lot of the marketing. They help with the marketing. You still got to do the bulk of it yourself, but it is an option for someone like me who is writing and eager to write, but probably needs that coaching and that polishing because of the inexperience.
Did anybody else have a coach or a mentor for writing?
Yeah, I would say it's more so the editor becomes the writing coach. I've worked with several editors with different genres, different books, and different styles, and the editor kind of helps sculpt and mold how your book is going to be as well, and helps bring your voice out too. So the editor kind of works as that mentor. That once you're done with your first book and you kind of have a look and a style to your writing, your editor kind of helps focus that.
Peggy Kimmy asked a question. Speaking of blogging, if you publish and reuse your blog info into a book, so repurposing, which I wanted to talk about, do you remove the content from the blog, or do you go so much more deeply in a book you don't feel that you are offering the same material free on one place and not for free in another? Oh, that's a good question.
Would you like me to speak to that?
Yeah, David, because I think you probably are the best person to start answering, because you probably have actually gone through this writing for blogs and repurposing it into a book and vice versa.
I don't give it a second thought. I publish it freely on my blog, and then I publish it in books, and people can pay for it, and they're free to trawl through like 25, 30 blog posts. But I don't know about you, but I would much prefer just to kind of drop like $3 or $4 and have the same information in a book. So it doesn't. I don't unpublish anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I publish to my blog, I use something called Story Chief, and it throws it out to about 5 other places at the same time.
Okay.
So I'm all about just getting words out there. Really, I'm a word person, and I just want to kind of deliver as much value as I can in whatever way I can. Really.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm probably going to at some point turn some of my blog posts into another book, because why not repurpose it instead of reinventing the wheel? If I want to write an idea that I've already written about, and I will be expanding on the blog post, because most of my blog posts are the minimum number of words, because they're so niched and specific, because I'm working on the optimization. So it's not like that blog post goes into so much depth. The book would be more depth. So I definitely plan on repurposing the blog post. Does anyone else have any comment about that, or any experience with blog posts in a book? Okay, then I'll move on. Ellen Ginsberg Simon. I'm betting she's related to Mike Ginsberg.
It's a ringer.
I'm gonna ask Mike and Mary this question. Actually, you all have children, don't you? The question's, how do you balance life, parentheses, kids, day job, and writing? I don't have kids, so this is all you guys. Mike, you want to start?
Sure. I work early in the morning. I get into the office very early, or when I was at home working from home, get downstairs real early, and before I'll start work for the day, say from 6 to 8:30, I'll try to do some writing. And then, like I said, periodically during the day while I'm working, I might take an hour or a half hour and do some more writing there. It is a challenge, and I think that's part of the reason why it took me 3 years to get this done. But you can do it. It just you do have to accept the fact that you may have to put down the book times where you might have some momentum, and it's just kind of, you've got to pick up from where you were. But it works itself out. But you do have to find those times. It's usually when the kids are sleeping or off doing an activity that I find the most time to write.
Anybody else? Mary, you touched on this earlier.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, when the kids go to sleep, that's usually the quietest time that there is. And so I sacrifice like TV time with my husband and put in headphones and just write that way, where if there's any quiet time at all, you use it when you can, and recognize when you need like just complete mind breaks. But like for the most part, you just you've got to sit and do the work.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I think, Mary, you said you have 5 kids. Is that right? 5 kids under 9. I mean, you are a champion. Absolutely. We've got 4 kids. I've got 2 older ones now who are now at college. So they're no longer at home, a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old. And then I've got 2 younger ones. We kind of bookended. And I sometimes wonder what we were thinking, honestly. So I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old as well, who keep us on our toes. We've had all this pandemic lockdown going on as well, so we've been homeschooling the kids. And so I definitely do understand the challenges of living in a busy household. But again, I mean, I kind of, you get done what you need to get done, and for me, like, writing is my breathing. It's just that's what I do. That's who I am. It's not something outside of it's work for me. It's life and it's work. It's just a bit like, I don't know if any of you have read the book of Jeremiah, but he talks about, like, they told him to shut up. And he said, so I just shut up and I zipped my lip. He said, but it was burning in my bones and I just couldn't keep silent. And I feel like that really when it comes to words, I can't help but get them out there somehow, in some way. So So yeah, you find time for the things that are most important for you. That's just a fact, I think.
Yeah. Russ, do you have anything to add?
Well, I started my company or started publishing 20 years ago when my girls were just little kids. So now they're all in their mid to early 20s, and it's the gamut. We would put them in bed about 8, 9 o'clock. I would have about an hour or two of time for myself, and then my wife would come home from her evening shift, or I would go to my evening shift, depending on which year we were on. And you just made that time, and it's there. It's like Dave said, it's part of who you are. I have to create. I have to create art. I have to create words. I have to create poetry, songs, stories. It's something you do, and you just have to. You make time for it. So.
Yeah, it's like working out. Sometimes people say, well, I don't have time. I don't have 20 minutes a day. Well, I mean, if it's important to you, you make time to do it. I mean, you find the time. Where everybody's busy, and we all find it in different ways.
Like David said, as long as you enjoy doing what you love, it's not work. And so I enjoy being a creative person for my day job. So it's not work for me when I have to write something or draw something.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And speaking of working out, Gene, and working out and writer's block, or the absence of, I often find that just going for a run can really just help. I'll go for a run and I'll plug in an audio book or something like that, and just go out and do half an hour, 40 minutes, just kind of running in. And usually I'll hear something, or an idea will just kind of pop into my head. And that's enough. That one hook, just that hook idea, when it drops into your mind, is enough to then kind of springboard off of into kind of whatever your next. And as I say, I'm really speaking as a non-fiction writer than a fiction writer. So, but yeah, certainly, like, we're holistic people. In the sense that, like, you know, if one part isn't working, if we can't just dredge something out of our mind because we're sat in front of a computer, sometimes the best thing to do is just strap your trainers on and just go do something with your body, or and that can be really helpful.
Yeah, you know, I agree with that. I actually got the idea of the title for my book while I was hiking. I didn't have my computer with me. I was thinking and it came to me, and that's how the title came to me. So Ellen asked another question. Could you elaborate on your various processes for crafting a book? Do you follow the same writing process for each independent work? I guess that can, I guess Russ and David, you guys can answer that, since you've published multiple books.
Well, for me, the writing process is definitely different. For the poetry and the songs, that's more free flow, because it's the rhythm. I did a lot of my poetry writing as a song progression for being in bands. And so I have a rhythm, and there's a certain process to that. Whereas the short story that I wrote, it was, well, what's the person going to get to next? And trying to figure out the steps of, okay, I know they're going to get to C, but what happens in B? And so there's a little more figuring out your outline of what's going to happen to each character in that process. But then you have a third one, like my book, where I'm just trying to write about my process of creating the artwork. And that's more like a blog, free flow, trying to talk to someone and trying to write it down. So that's three different books, three different styles. And each one has their own little nuance of how to create with them and how to write for them.
David, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, like Russ was saying, I tend to have an outcome in mind for my books. And so everything really flows toward that outcome. Like the book that I mentioned here, Gene, about kind of developing a kind of secret life of prayer, that kind of private prayer life. The outcome I had in mind was that someone would be inspired and equipped to do like what the book sets out and promises to lead them towards. And so everything, you know, as far as process is concerned, a lot of the process comes out of the promise. So if I also do a lot of books about how to write and sell books, for example, so aimed at authors. And so again, that like although they're very different styles in some way, most of the things I write, other than my poetry, which is kind of more personal, has an outcome in mind. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always thinking, okay, a bit like Russ was saying, okay, what's the step here? What's the next step? What's the next kind of layer or line that needs to go online to get my reader to the place that I would love to see them get to, you know, and where they want to be. So.
Okay.
If you don't mind me jumping in and offering because after writing this book, I'm working on others, but I learned so much about process. So now instead of, and like the genre that I write in is more formulaic, where there's certain steps that my hero is going to have to take in order for everything to work out. I don't know if you guys can hear my kids screaming behind the door. Yeah. So there are like novel planning apps that you can purchase that can help you, like the Novel Factory and Scrivener and Evernote and things like that, that can help you with your process and help you organize different things. It's it's more for, what is the term, like pantser versus plotter. You guys know those terms? So yeah, writing by the seat of your pants or plotting out the book beforehand. So I've seen myself turn more into a plotter because of how long the first process took. So I think as you grow and as you learn, your process is just going to change.
I think that's true too. I think I've got a couple ideas for my next book, and the ideas are completely different. But I definitely think the process is going to change from the last time, just based on everything that I learned. Then that's something that I definitely want everybody to answer before we're done, you know, what you've learned that surprised you. But what I really want to get to now is marketing, because we've talked about marketing so much with the traditional and self-publishing. How have you all, because we've all experienced marketing our books during the pandemic. Mike and Mary, your first book, Russ, I'm sure, well, with helping your clients. And then David, you're just always writing. So I'm sure there were several that came out during the pandemic. How do you market now, since we cannot do in-person events, or at least not for a very long time? Personally, I had a book signing scheduled on March 16th of 2020. That was canceled because that was the week that everything shut down. I still have not had an in-person one, but I pivoted to doing a bunch online. I spoke to Rotary clubs and things like that, just anybody that would let me talk. So what have you all done to try to market your book in this, you know, in this unconventional time? Anybody want to start?
I'm very happy to speak to this, unless someone else is. Mike, you almost looked like you were going to jump there.
Mike can go next.
Eager to hear the answer.
All right.
Everybody wants to learn how to do it.
David. My main focus, two main focuses. Email list. Build an email list. Make it a top priority. Number one priority for every content provider and content seller ever is build a list of readers, because those people, if they have read your stuff and they choose to exchange their email and their name for whatever kind of bribe you want to offer them, because so like in a book, for example, I will usually think of the next step, the next logical step for my reader. So, hey, you're reading a book about prayer. I've got this awesome like mini course about prayer that you can get for free if you give me your email, etc. For my fiction books, I will usually create a short story that is maybe unavailable any other way other than, hey, we've got like the prequel to this awesome book that you've just read, but the only way to get it is if you opt in to receive my new release kind of info, etc. And so email list is absolutely my number one money generating option. Oh, and like obviously you begin from the ground up oftentimes. In my fiction, I had no experience in the fiction market until 4 or 5 years ago. Zero experience, zero lists. I was publishing under pen names, so I couldn't do any physical. If I turned up as one of my pen names, they would think it very strange that I had a beard, because most of my pen names are women. Genre fiction, Mary. I do genre fiction. You're absolutely right. There is very much kind of this is just the way that these books work. That's what the reader wants. That's what we give to the reader. But so that number one, but Facebook ads have been probably the primary avenue for that. And I don't spend thousands. I do over time, but for an individual book, I will spend anything from kind of $30 to $100 on Facebook ads, because the great thing with Facebook ads is you can target very specific people. So like my fiction, I publish sweet, beautiful, safe Christian romance and cozy mysteries and things like that. Most of my readership, I've discovered through running ads, is an older female American audience, other than a few genres that I publish to in fiction. And so I can target specifically, like say, for example, in Facebook, I can target women who are aged between 35 and 65 plus in America who are interested in, and then I can narrow it down to like cozy mystery or historical fiction. I can, you might want to target other authors, popular authors in your same genre, because people who are interested in those authors would be interested in your book potentially. And so I've done it that way. And then the really another key element there is that you make sure that your cover is very much to market. So you do not want to stand out in the wrong way. Like if your cover is totally different to all of the other covers within that genre, your readers aren't even going to kind of twig that this is the kind of book that they like. So oftentimes you really want to write and sell to the market that's already there, buying and looking for the kind of book that you are selling. And so I will create covers that are very similar to the best-selling covers that are trending at a given time. Obviously not copying them, but I'll look and think, all right, this is what people are buying right now. And so I will kind of piggyback on that and do similar themes or similar look. And then, like I say, utilize Facebook adverts to try and get that book in front of the same people who are buying the books that are similar to the one I'm selling. Is that helpful?
Yes, I was taking notes. It's interesting that you say the Facebook ads are helpful. I've heard people say, obviously we all have different experiences. I've heard attorneys say that Facebook ads were not helpful, but they were putting ads out there for their service. Do you think it's different because this is a specific product?
I think it depends how you sell something.
Okay.
People love to buy stuff, but they don't like to be sold to.
Yep.
But they love to buy stuff. And if you can sell with a story. Sell with something that moves them emotionally. People's wallet is attached to their emotions. It's not attached to their head. We buy emotionally and then we justify afterwards reasonably. And a lot of people put adverts out trying to sell something like reasonably. All right, this is our service. You know, these are the things that you get, instead of like trying to grab someone by the heart and kind of make them feel something, move them to make a decision, move them to kind of make that purchase. I'm not talking using shady, weird tactics. Don't misunderstand me, but understand just the psychology of people. Make it something that they honestly can engage with, not just another an ad that they phase out because they're sick of seeing like 10,000 ads. So yes, I mean, I've found Facebook ads to be good if you can find the right target.
Okay.
Because you can drill down by kind of demographics, but where it really gets powerful is where you actually say, okay, these are the interests of these people. And say, if you can find the right interests, your ad is turning up in front of someone who is like looking for what you're offering. And that's the power of it. You can also narrow an audience down. So say, for example, you can go, I want people who are interested in historical fiction, but are also interested in Amazon Kindle. And so it's not just, or like you could do, like I do mysteries, for example, someone who's interested in Agatha Christie, but I mean, someone could be interested in Agatha Christie because they love watching it on television, or but like numerous reasons. Yeah. So you can then narrow that down. Okay, I want people who are interested in that, but are also interested in, like I say, Amazon Kindle or something else that would further narrow that audience and make it much more specific to the to the people potentially that you believe would be interested in what you're offering. Most of my Facebook advertising, like just to clarify, has been in the genre fiction realm, as opposed to kind of here's a legal book. So it would work for it would work in anything if you can get the right story to leverage the people you're trying to reach, and you could get the right interests. But my main experience has been more in the fiction side of things.
Okay.
I've got some training on my website, davidleemartin.net. There's a book called Lessons from the Self-Publishing Trenches. And that goes into the whole Facebook ad, how I utilize Facebook ads. But I mean, pretty much I've told you what I do here anyway. So, you don't need it, that's, but yeah, I talk about some of the different ways in which I've used it and some of the different images I use and things like that.
Well, I'm gonna put that in the comments so everybody can go check it out. davidleemartin.net. Okay. I have a cataract in one eye. That's why I keep like going in like that. That was so much useful information. Anybody else have any suggestions on their experience in marketing during COVID?
Okay, I can't say a whole lot because this book hasn't been published yet. But from what I've learned, social media, like Facebook ads, it's so important. And through the pandemic, there are ways that you can use other social media platforms, not just Facebook. But I'm on Instagram and Twitter. There's also TikTok. People are trying to like break into how do you sell something on TikTok. But Instagram is a really good place for people to get to know who you are as an author. And then if they like you, they buy your book. But that is a more like, you have to really figure out how to work with Instagram like using the right hashtags, capturing the right audience. Not like right now, my audience is other writers, but I want to capture like the young adult readers. So how do I do that? There's like different hashtags that you can use. What are you posting? Are you posting things that your readers are going to want to read about, you know, and different things like that, so that you can capture an audience and grow your followers, being more genuine in who you are, not putting on a front or being like, buy my book, like just selling. Like David was talking about the emotional buy, like, do they like who you are as a person? And with a lot of genre fiction, they want to know who you are. So that's just a little bit of what I've learned.
Yeah, and there are websites that actually generate hashtags. They're called hashtag generators. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but you know, you can use those to promote anything that you're doing on Instagram or Twitter.
Amazon also have an advertising platform directly as well. I'm sure you've probably seen on Amazon where you get the sponsored books. If you go to advertising.amazon.com, and you can actually then within that you can target, either you can just let them target things for you, or you can target specific keywords. Keywords might include authors, popular book titles, the keywords that people may be searching. It's not an easy nut to crack, if I'm honest, Amazon advertising, but if you can crack it, it can work really well. And they have a number of different ways in which you can present your book to people who are already kind of looking. So like someone's book might come up and your book will come up in either the sponsored ones underneath the book or sometimes alongside it, those kind of things. But like I say, you can spend a lot of money doing that and not make a lot back. You need to be really careful to follow the ads and make sure that they're yielding fruit. But I found that's worked well. I do journals. So one of the things I do is prayer journals. And the markup on those is a lot more than the markup on my fiction. And so that's worked really well. Some people will suggest that you do like 1,000 keywords. I found it much better to just do, and again, I'm no expert on this side of things, to be honest, but I found it much better to just target a small number of keywords, maybe a dozen to 20, because it means that I can track more clearly, is this actually working? Am I getting a return on my investment here? So yeah, there are different kind of people will suggest different things there. It really is very much a matter of trial and error. Another place that you can advertise, pay to advertise, is BookBub. Partners.bookbub.com. They've got like lists, email lists. I said about the email list. Well, BookBub is like one massive email list for various genres. And they also have an advertising platform where you can kind of pay for impressions in the emails that they send out. Tiny little kind of postage stamp size adverts that appear. So again, you can find your money kind of disappearing somewhat quickly. But it is a way to get your book in front of actual readers. It's not just random people scrolling Facebook or, you know, browsing TikTok. These are actual readers. So it can be a way to get that initial push, to get the wheels moving. And once you get the wheels moving on Amazon, their own algorithm, as we all know, is fine-tuned to sell stuff to people. And so if you can get that algorithm moving with some early sales, the algorithm then will pick you up, and but you have to generate that initial momentum one way or another.
I am taking a lot of notes. That was very helpful. And one thing that I wanted to point out that I forgot to mention earlier, anybody that's published or looked into publishing on Amazon, you can create an author page, and that's free. And you can connect it to your Twitter. I did that. I actually did that a while ago and then never looked back. I should probably check that out. But you can put a bio on there. You can put your headshot, all the books that you've written. It's just like another social media profile if you want to look at it that way. And I've read that the people who have the author pages, you look more professional and legit. So that's another thing to look into that I actually forgot to. I didn't even think about saying it until just now. Mike or Russ, any other suggestions for marketing during this time where we can't really go back in public as much as we used to?
I know that, I looked into things like blog tours. There are people out there that have blogs of interest, and you can reach out to bloggers and get them to talk about your book. That is an avenue that can work. You mentioned the Amazon page. There's other things like Goodreads and, making sure that you get a lot of reviews, get people to review your book and get reviews posted of your book on the page. That's really important and helpful. I haven't been able to do that yet, but I've got people queued up, ready to roll when it comes out. So, I think that's something also worth doing. So those are two things I would recommend.
That's a really good idea. And a point about the reviewing. I keep talking about Amazon because that's all that I have personal experience with. But with Amazon, they have to confirm that the person writing the review actually bought the book. You can't just have your boyfriend or your friend just go on there and write a review. The person has to actually buy the book, and then they can go on and write a review. So keep that in mind. However you want to, thank them for their investment in writing the review, but it does have to actually be a purchaser. If you guys know if it's different with any other sites, please chime in and let me know.
Well, for me personally, I give a crap about this COVID. I've been doing book publishing for over 20 plus years, so I do it old school style. I go to the conferences, I go to book fairs, I go to the mom and pop bookshops, and I say, hey, on Saturday, do you mind if I set up for 2 hours and sell my book, and part of the proceeds will go to your store, and you do the old DIY punk rock motivation. But it's kind of hard right now with having to wear your mask, and so I'm holding off until I can have a book signing. I've got a couple books that we came out with last year that I'm not advertising or saying that I have available, simply because I want to talk to the person that's buying the book. I want to sign my signature in the book, and I want to build this relationship with my readers of who's the reason why they're purchasing my poetry, the reason why they're purchasing the short story book, the reason why they're getting the art book. I want to connect with the person. And so I'm a very big proponent of easing this COVID restrictions and letting us go back to book signings and doing events and going to conventions, and it's just so much. I'm ready for those events to come back.
Yeah, me too. So I forgot to mention the reason why I knew about Mike's book is because he posted something on LinkedIn, and it was just we've been connections for 10 years, a long time, and it was just the first thing that popped up in my LinkedIn. It's not newsfeed, whatever, and that's how I saw it. And I don't think it was a paid ad, was it? Nope, he just posted, and I saw it. And David, I found out about David because I listened to Dan Warheid's podcast. You never know how people are going to find out. And Mary, I found out that she was writing the book because we were chatting one time after a networking event that her husband was at, the owner of Premier Martial Arts, and I knew him, and that's how I met Mary. And Russ, I met through the Central Fairfax Chamber of Commerce. He told me what he did, and then we talked about him helping me with my book. So I mean, there's so many ways that people can find out, but with what's going on right now, we're limited. But I mean, Mary, that happened to be an in-person event. Russ, that was in person pre-COVID. David, that was a podcast I listened to during COVID, and Mike again during COVID. But I, not that those ways are gonna make us all millions of dollars, but you never know what's gonna work. And Mary, I know your book is not published yet, but are you doing anything right now to advertise it?
I don't. The only way that I really do anything is like I'm really active on Instagram because it's such a great learning tool. There's so many different writers on there, and literary agents as well. But so the answer is no, not really, except just randomly I'll share snippets of what I'm doing to connect with people. But my husband, as a business owner, like he is a crazy marketing guy, and he has so many ideas for me. And I like when I first began writing, I didn't understand that it was a business and I'm going to need to know how to market. So I've learned so much along the way, and then doing things like this writing panel, I'm still learning a lot. So.
And that is actually a great segue into my last and final question, unless you guys give me more ideas based on your responses. I want to ask you all, what advice would you either give your younger self or an aspiring author who's just starting the process of writing a book? What advice would you give them? Aside from all the advice we've already mentioned, what's the first thing you would say? Mike, let's start with you. I'm just going to go in order.
Sure, no problem. I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is don't give up. If there's a delay or a stall, don't give up, and don't give up if I tried to, talk to potential agents or traditional publishers, and it just, as a new author, it was hard to sort of break into that world, but don't give up, because there are all these options out there for you. And you can really come up with a really great product. You can actually make more money out of it, these non-traditional ways, and enjoy it. Have fun with it. It really is intended. I mean, for me, it's a hobby, and I guess those would be my two pieces of advice.
Okay, David, what about you?
I'm dropping a link in the chat here, Jean. Maybe you can drop it on the Facebook. I've not got Facebook open. I've just got the kind of StreamYard thing open here.
That should publish directly to Facebook. If you.
All right. Okay. All right. I didn't realize. Okay. That would be my advice. Published is better than perfect. Just do it. Get it out there. Get your stuff out there. Learn as you go. I'll tell you, when you actually do it, you learn the right questions to ask. When you're on the other side of actually just getting skin in the game, you can ask questions till the cows come home, but you don't know what you're asking about, but once you're in the game and you're like, man, how do I sell this thing? It becomes imminent. It becomes real. It becomes something that you're willing to act on and do something about. And so, yeah, I would just tell myself, dude, get started as soon as you can. Don't worry about making it perfect. Make it better as you go. I mean, that doesn't mean just put out a lot of rubbish, obviously, but don't get so anal over it being exactly right, because it never will be. That's the problem, and as you get the wheels moving, all of that. I mean, Russ was talking about, you just get those creative juices flowing. There's always another book in you. There's always another blog post in you. There's always another painting in you. There's always another poem in you. You are not going to run dry. It's like when you siphon, not that I've ever siphoned petrol, but if you got to give the thing a bit of a tug and a bit of a suck. But then that vacuum, when you get rid of that vacuum, it just keeps spilling out. And I find the creative process is very much like that. I mean, sometimes you got to put a bit of will into it and just do it despite feeling insecure, despite feeling inadequate. It's just like that, sucking on that thing. but as you do that, it opens something up on the inside that actually unlocks the genius that resides within you. And there is more than you can ever comprehend on the inside if you'll just trust yourself enough to share it with the world. There you go. That was like proper preach, man, that one. But I mean it. I am a preacher, but that wasn't that I'm genuine. Yeah, that was real.
I'm inspired. I'm going to start working on my next book after we get done with this, until my 3 o'clock meeting. So
yeah, come on.
All right, Mary, what would you tell somebody who's just starting the process in the very beginning?
Well, I'm going to tell them what I wish I had told myself, and that is finish the book. Like, just finish it. Finish writing it, get to the end, and then, like, it's okay if it's not perfect. And kind of going off of what David said, which I wish I had met you way back then, to just, siphon that out, and the creative juices are going to keep flowing. But there is a power in finishing a manuscript. And because once you've done it, you can do it again. And I wish that I had known that a lot sooner.
Yeah. And once it's finished, you can always go back and tweak things. Right. And, you can read it a million times and someone else will still find a typo. But just getting it done, it doesn't mean done and publish it right then, but your content is all there. Everything you want is in there. And then you can go back and make the minor changes.
Right.
Russ, what about you? Well, Russ can tell you stories about me freaking out and things that I wish I knew, but we'll get to me later.
Yeah, but it's exactly what David's saying. I wish I can go back to that very first Russ that was trying to write, and I worried so much about this is going to be my baby. I've got to make sure the dots are right and the T's are crossed. And you know what? That book came out and it's actual garbage crap. It wasn't until like my second or third or fourth book that I caught on to the nuances of what actually needs to go on. And I'm glad I got that first book done, but I wish I didn't labor over it so much that I could enjoy the next few phases of doing book 2, doing book 3. And because of that, like you said, this book Glimmer came out in 2004. Here's Glimmer now, updated cover, revised text, and it's 2020. So 16 years later from the first printing to the second printing. You can always go back. I love the book so much, I had to fix those little things that bothered me in it. And so definitely go back. There's no stopping you. You can fix things as you go along. Even though there's mistakes in here, I went back 16 years later and fixed them. So there's nothing stopping you. Just get the book out there. Get your idea out there. Let everybody else check it out and enjoy it.
And with self-publishing, if you realize there's a typo or there's a change in law, like there actually was a change in law, which I have to go back, Russ will talk later. There's something I need to change in my book because the law is different. Luckily, I think I have a disclaimer about these are the laws at the time of publication. But yeah, it's easy. You go in, you can change it, and then anybody that purchases the book after that will get the newest version. And Russ, you said something else I wanted.
It's very sorry, just to pick up on, you actually find your voice by using it, not by sitting waiting for it to find you. Mm-hmm. And when you begin writing, when you begin expressing yourself in whatever way it may be, whether it's blogging, whether it's, if you're a musician singing or whatever, but you actually discover your voice. I think Russ touched on this a little bit, is that like, it's in the process of doing that you arrive at the place where you become a great deal more comfortable with, hey man, that's me. I'm in that. I'm in those words. Those first books, I can totally relate. I'm embarrassed by the first books that I put out. They're shocking, man. It's like, but nevertheless, the first book led to the second, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth. Mm-hmm. And there are some that I've published beyond those early ones that I'm like, that is really good stuff.
Mhm.
And I would never have got there if I'd not gone through the kind of painful, embarrassing journey of actually figuring out who I am in the midst of I mean, I just call it practicing in public.
Mhm.
And I guess maybe one other thing that I might throw in is, one of the things I found really helpful is that when I wanted to write really well, I read a lot. I didn't just
Mhm.
write, but I read other people's stuff, people who were in the same genre or things like that. I mean, my book was kind of a political thriller. So I went back and I read The Manchurian Candidate, and I went back and I read Marathon Man, and I saw how other authors did what they did. And I picked up things here and there. And so I guess I would encourage, if you want to write well, read a lot.
Mhm. That's a really good tip. Well, I think the consensus from everybody on our panel, as David eloquently put it, published isn't perfect. Is that what I wrote? Or, oh, David, how exactly did you say it?
Published is better than perfect.
Published is better than perfect. And I think everybody agrees. Get your book done. Just do it. Publish it. And we all have it in us to write another one. And I think we can all agree that after that process of writing the first book, it gets easier, regardless of what type of book we're writing, because we know about the process. We know things to do the next time. We know things not to do. It's an experience going through it. And if you hate your first book and you write 10 more, then who cares? That 10th book is so much better because of your process of going through it. I just kind of added to what you all said. But I want to thank you all so much for joining this panel. I have learned a lot. I have a full page of notes. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to talk about your different experiences. And I will ask, you don't have to do this right this second, but if you will put the links to your social media channels, your books, anything you want people to have, add those in the Facebook, comments, and that will live on forever. And this will also be a podcast episode, so it will go in the show notes. I'm in the process of getting that going right now. So if you're listening to the podcast in the future, you know that we're on Facebook Live right now. So put everything that you, all the ways you want people to be able to contact you in the Facebook comments. Mike Ginsberg, author of Debt Bomb, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. David Lee Martin, author of a myriad of books. Mary Rook, author of, I don't have the page up. Leda, tell me the name of your book.
Leda of the Sky.
Leda of the Sky. And Russ, I know Mindscape's in the title.
Yeah, the Mindscape of Russ Mcintosh. Surreal art that entices the mind. So
see, you can't blame me for not remembering all those. Okay, well, thank you all so much. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We actually had a pretty good crowd who stayed on the whole time. I think everybody enjoyed it. And Don Whitmore said, thank you all. And thanks to the audience for participating. And thank you guys again. And I wish you all success with getting your books, your books published that are in the process. And David, I'm looking forward to seeing what your next book is. So thanks again, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Jean.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.